Hello there, I'm Timothy Linsdale, video producer, Christian. Today I'm putting on my political hat. Live only a couple miles from the border. Hasn't been a lot of action recently. Of course, a lot of terrible stuff in the news with shootings in churches, but there's enough reporters out there to take care of that. I was focusing in on the latest issues over the border that really kicked up a couple years ago as these large groups people start coming in. As of last fall, when the first, what they called caravan group started to come in, it starts to overwhelm our system. They're piling up in Tijuana. And it becomes sadly, it becomes a heartbreaking mess. And the mess continues, poor, sad people trying to find a way to improve their station in life. Whatever mess is going on down there in Latin American countries that are pushing people up here. It's sad. But anyway, they're piling up in Tijuana. This is a major, major border crossing area, one of the busiest in the world. So they start to pile up. Mexican authorities are overwhelmed. Their social system, if you will, does not have enough money to handle those numbers. But these people start to make do for themselves. And they actually start to find jobs in Mexico. They start working it out somehow. They've come across a group here, if I can find it quickly, called the Grupo Beta. It's really a quasi-official organization, and it's really not any more than a particular person taking a notebook. And what happens down there in this main plaza in Tijuana is where all these people gather to try to get through American customs. And so they gather in a line. So somebody started to make a notebook and take down names, say 20 names, okay? And you're in the line here, and you can go forward. Now, what really controls that? Apparently nothing. The Mexican officials have refused to comment on it. I'm not even sure Customs and Border Patrol comment that much on it, because it's something run by the immigrants themselves, apparently, and some activists, which can change daily. In fact, some of these immigrants complain all kinds of things, and not being official, there's really nobody to complain to. It's a heartbreaking, sad, sad mess. But they gather in the mornings and line up, and they use this Grupo Beta thing to try to control it. So when it gets bad, people start to try to work things out themselves. They say the notebook appeared about a year ago, and that's when the real pressure of these caravans started. And I said people start to just take things into their own hands and try to figure it out. So I was trying to understand it from an article in the local paper here. And of course, U.S. policy limits how many can come in at once. I recently spoke to a customs official working near the Rio Grande, and I'd seen some footage of this area. And small families would gather together, and eventually they'd have a big group. They'd cross the Rio Grande in a shallow place, surrender themselves to the Border Patrol, and say we want to declare asylum. And that's pretty much how it works. Then from that point, the border officials have to have a place to put people. They don't just let them go. They find warehouses, buildings of some kind, put them in there. If they're incarcerated, families are not mixed with single men. I spoke to one customs official that people talk about splitting up the children and things, though that's new. Well, anybody in the U.S. going to jail, their kids don't go with them. It's the same thing. It's really not any different. So that becomes an issue. So they can't receive enough people. It backlogs them into Tijuana, and you end up with this group trying to sort it out. It's really a de facto group of immigrants just trying to take care of themselves, basically. There are groups or comments from people who've struggled trying to use this group to get across. They've been told your name is up, come on in. Well, they run to get their family. By the time they come back, they lose their place in line. And it's the usual hell for them, I'm sure. One guy, a family in particular from, let me see if I can find it. They were from, excuse the paper noise. They were from Nicaragua, and that's got warfare, I suppose, cartel warfare going on. Some of the early heavy Mexican population was coming from states with cartels with raging wars. Oh boy, on and on it goes. But anyway, this group apparently tries to do what they can. And of course, the usual political battle goes on, blaming the Trump administration. And I noticed in this article they were showing that these numbers, what they call metering, the word basically means that a certain number of people are allowed to come across that they can handle. I don't even know why you have to use a word like that. I mean, how else are you going to do it unless you just let them walk in anywhere? But that's part of the system. That's not just Trump's thing. My opinion is the Trump, greater enforcement on the border by Trump had to do with Muslim terrorists getting mixed in these groups and coming across. That's my opinion, why it's been made stronger. But also, there recently had spoken about these activist organizations that are centered in America, that people go into Mexico and they say to try to help the immigrants come across. But what seems to have happened is they're encouraging people in Latin America and Central American areas to come across en masse. Well, we're not, the border officials aren't just going to let them just rush in here. Such a crazy thing. But anyway, that's part of it. See if I can find some more information on this for you. Like I said, it's a quasi group. None of the government officials take it as official, so there's no governing system to control it. So if you told you get to go in one day and the next day you get there and you can, it's just the way it's going to be with this thing. I read here David Fitzgerald, a professor at UCSD, a really terrific university here in San Diego. To quote him, he says, the current situation is a really clear illustration of how the U.S. pays and pressures Mexico to do the dirty work of migration control. Well, that's quite a statement. I think I'll ask some of the customs guys I know about that quote, see what they have to say to that. I'm sure it'll be pretty. The Congress has made laws for immigration. We might not like them. Pressure Congress to change them. I mean, you got to put a lot of pressure on them to make them change anything. Otherwise, we have a system by law of how this system's supposed to work, how they're supposed to come across. This particular thing they came across is a quasi-official attempt by these immigrants to try to control their situation of getting into the U.S. and surviving in Mexico, which many say is not a safe bet down there. And after the shootings in some of our churches, it's not a safe bet anywhere, I'm afraid. So it becomes a tit-for-tat argument. Who's doing what, why they're doing it. This group doing what they can. Of course, many of them are tired of waiting, and they'll climb the border fences down here or wherever they get through. They get caught. Many of these activist groups, and there are some, do tell the immigrants should be very careful about crossing in any of the wilderness areas here. And I did a film some years ago on Otay Mountain, which is near here. It was a main crossing route until they built a major wall across it. But when they would get out in the wilderness, they're subject to all kinds of bandits out there and whatnot that attack them. And the wilderness areas from here east, some of those areas are desert, arid desert, really dangerous to be out there lost, especially with no water hardly. They should be telling them, don't do that. And that's what the government tried to tell them. You're going to have to get in line and wait for your asylum claim. And that's how it is. I know it's got to be miserable, I'm sure. This one lady said that protested to a Grupo Beta official, which there really is no such thing, visibly frustrated at being told she have to wait yet again as the crowd murmured with unrest on all sides. The official responded that it wasn't my fault. They're only taking 20, he said. What else can we do? That probably kind of sums it up. They're just struggling, miserable. Sadly, it's a mess for them, I'm sure. We can't take everybody all at once. I'm sure they're doing what they can. Could they do better? We could do better probably at everything. But that's how we got it. It's where we're at. So trying to give you a little info about what's going on the border, besides the sewer mess we get from Tijuana. That's a whole nother story. But it's kind of a wild place to live. Of course, you can't beat the weather in San Diego, and that's one of the main reasons we're here. But actually, we love the river valley. It's just needs a lot of work. So I'm Timothy Linsdale. Hey, how about like and commenting on my video? Subscribe to my channel. We'll talk more about the border stuff. So thanks a lot and have a great day.